Hey everyone! Today we're going to go through your novel book for the term, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, written by Mark Twain. So before we get into the book, let's take a quick look about the author. Mark Twain was born in America in Missouri, which later becomes the setting of his famous novel that you are going to read, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So let's take a look at the main characters that appear in this novel. You have Tom Sawyer, who is the main protagonist of the story. Tom lives with his aunt on the banks of the Mississippi River and is always longing for an adventure. Huckleberry Finn is one of Tom's friends. Huck was not raised with any parental guidance, so he was always willing to go on the mischievous adventures with Tom. Aunt Polly is Tom's aunt and guardian. She is responsible for Tom's upbringing. Sid Sawyer is Tom's youngest half-brother, and he was the complete opposite of Tom, as he is a very studious pupil and is very much a goody-two-shoes. Becky Thatcher is Tom's age and has recently moved into town with her father, Judge Thatcher. Becky has never caused much trouble and is used to following her mother's words. Tom quickly gives her all of his love and affection. Injun Joe is the antagonist of the novel. He has a violent temperament who seeks revenge on those who has treated him harshly. He is guilty of many murders in the past. Muff Potter, another character, is the town drunk. He was framed for killing Dr. Robinson and was persecuted instead of Injun Joe, as the town believed that he was guilty. Other minor characters that appear in the novel include Widow Douglas and Joe Harper. Widow Douglas is a rich upper-class widow and is very hospitable and kind. Joe Harper is Tom's other friend in his gang of pirates who go out on adventures together. Tom Sawyer lives with his Aunt Polly. He gets into trouble one day because he skipped school. As his punishment, Tom was told to do some chores. As we can see here, he was supposed to whitewash the fence. However, his smart but mischievous character is revealed when he convinces some boys that the chore is actually honorable and receives small treasures as payment for letting them do the work for him. Continuing on with the story, we get the introduction of Becky Thatcher. Tom falls in love with a new girl in town, Becky Thatcher. He captures her interests and then proposes to her immediately. Although she was initially reluctant, Becky eventually accepts his engagement, but is devastated after hearing of Tom's previous engagement with Amy Lawrence. Tom becomes extremely embarrassed when this happens and runs away immediately. The story then describes the adventures of Huck and Tom. They agree to meet up at the graveyard at midnight to test the method of curing warts using a cat. While there, however, they accidentally witness Injun Joe kill Dr. Robinson. After committing the crime, Injun Joe frames Muff Potter, the town drunk, for the murder. Tom and Huck initially swear an oath to stay silent because they are terrified of what would happen to them if they spoke up. However, as time passes, they begin to feel increasingly sorry and guilty for Potter. So eventually, Tom decides to testify at the trial of Muff Potter. Injun Joe immediately escapes through the courtroom window. However, Potter is released and becomes a free man. The next story talks about how Tom and Huck go on an adventure to a haunted house in search of buried treasure. By complete coincidence, the boys discover that the treasure is real and see Injun Joe and his men enter the house to take it. Tom and Huck then have numerous close encounters with the men at different locations. Not long after that occurred, Tom, Becky, and their classmates all go to a cave for a picnic. Tom and Becky, however, get lost in the cave and accidentally bump into Injun Joe, who was using the cave as a hideout. Tom manages to find a way out and immediately inform the townspeople, who enter the cave and find Injun Joe dead from being trapped in the cave for too long. Later, Tom and Huck go back into the cave to bring back the treasure, and the treasure is then invested into their futures. So that concludes the novel summary for The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you can now read the novel with a much better understanding of the plot.